Right, we are looking at the week 5 or the chapter 5 content in the book. That's Introduction to R Part 2, and this week we are all about visualization, and I'm doing this through a very contrived scenario, all to do with mushroom composting. I thought that way I would keep it relevant to what you were doing in the labs this week, even though if it's not not identical to what you're doing in the labs, it has a bit of a microbiology feel to it. So here's the scenario. I'm not going to go through it again. Go and read it. The first thing we're going to do is generate a summary table, as you've done before with Excel. But I'm going to get hold of the data from 5.1.1 in the book. Let's just click here to download it. Okay, it's compost_999.csv. I'm going to leave that there for now. I'm not going to open that up. I'm just going to leave it where it is. The next thing I'm going to do is everything that's written in bold here. So I've got my RStudio open, wherever that is. Let's have a look. And I'm going to create a new R project. Now, I should have done this a few times already, but let's do it again anyway. I'm going to go either click this create project. In fact, I'll create the create project button. Ugh. This bit always takes a couple of seconds. New directory, new project. I'm just going to create it on my desktop here. Let's call this, I'm just going to call this compost. You call it whatever you want. And I'm going to create the project. Okay, I'm also going to create a script file. I'm going to call this one summary. Okay, or summary table, or anything with a sensible file name is good. Right, so I want to read in that data that I've just downloaded, but it's not in my project yet. So I'm going to go and look for my downloads directory. There it is, and there it is. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to go to my desktop, find that compost. There it is, and I'm going to paste that in there. Done. So now you can see it here. Let's take a look at this data. Let's try to inspect it first, right? I'm going to create a new variable called data. Oops. Of course, I'm going to use my read.csv function, and I'm going to feed in compost _999.csv, control and enter. There you go. There's my data. I could click on that to take a look. I'm going to do it a slightly different way this time. I'm going to do head data. So what this line will do, it will just give me the first, in this case, 6 lines of my data. So you can see here I've got a sample ID, a location, a date time, a day of the week, and I've got these 3 important ones which are at the end here: temperature, moisture, and viable dot counts. Okay, and what these are in turn, every row is a sample of mushroom compost. Okay, I know which site it came from, I know when it was taken, when the sample was taken, and I know the temperature and the moisture at the sample site, and I also know the viable counts. The viable counts corresponds to the number of colonies that I count on an agar plate. Once I've done my cereal dilution preparation and spread it onto a plate and incubated it, that's how many I can count. I think it's after, I can't remember what I said, after 24 hours. Okay, so there's my data set. I now want to create a summary table, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to refer to my notes here. Let's have a look at this. So I've done this bit in the chapter here. I've got a whole section here on calculating VBC, or viable bacterial count, from viable counts. So I'm actually interested in expressing these viable counts in units of CFU per G. That's colony forming units per gram, and that's a bit of a more useful unit to express these things in when looking at bacterial counts. So notice the difference between VBC and in some cases I've called it VC here. I'm not going to work through how you calculate it. All you need to know is that there's a factor of 20,000 here, or 2 times 10 to the power 5 to get from viable counts to viable bacterial counts in column forming units per gram. Okay, right, as for my summary table, I am not going to start from scratch here. I'm going to pinch the script file that I used in the last chapter to generate a summary table in R. It was the Pantheria data, you remember? So you can start there, and I can see a couple of tables I'm going to use, a couple of lines I'm going to use. In fact, I'm going to go a bit further than that, and I'm totally going to cheat. And I am going to get a copy of the script here and copy it, and I'm going to paste it straight over this inspection here, right? So I've still got my data variable. It's still reading the same file name. That's important. And then this line 4 here is creating a variable called summary underscore table, and it's assigning to it the result of this aggregate function, which is complicated. Okay, so just to give you a bit of an overview here, what it's doing is it's taking in my temperature, moisture, and viable counts columns, and it's saying I want those to be grouped by location. Okay, and I'm referring to my data here, so I've put in the word data here because even though I've put in the variable names within this aggregate function, it also needs to know the name or the variable of the data frame that these headers are in. So I've had to feed it the data frame as well. And then this is the complicated bit here. It's got this function. We call this sometimes a lambda function when we have this function x and then what we're going to do afterwards. I don't need you to understand what that means. I just need you to be able to run this code. But just to give you an overview, what it's doing, it's creating a vector here of mean values and standard deviation values grouped by location, okay, for temperature, moisture, and viable counts. And what that will do, in fact, if I just did, if I run this line, and make sure I run the first line again first, just in case. Okay, you can see it's creating a summary table, and it's pretty much got us there. I don't really like the headers. It looks a bit messy, this, doesn't it? Temperature, open square bracket, comma, mean. So what the line underneath this is doing, this summary table do call, it's just going to format the table in a nicer way so that there you go, I've got temperature dot mean. So it's a bit easier to get a handle on the columns in this data frame. I'm not quite finished yet, and that's because I've got the summary for the viable counts, but I also want the summary for the viable bacterial count, which means I need to include that factor of 2 times 10 to the 5 in there, and then I need to add those two columns for VBC to my data frame as well. Let's take a look at the book again, and the lines of code I actually needed here. I could have taken this entire thing actually. In fact, let's do that, and then let's just update our code and run the whole thing again from source. So I've got these extra couple of lines now. You can see I've got this factor, which is 2 times 10 to the 5, and I've divided it by 1e to the 7. Right, and that might look a bit weird, but the reason I'm doing that is because my VBC values are typically going to be in the order of about 100 times 10 to the 5. So I'm just going to express them in standard form as some number, point something, times 10 to the e to the minus 7, right? Or times 10 to the minus 7. So this dividing it by here allows me to express all of my values as 10 to the plus 7, I should say. I think I said minus a second ago. CFU per gram. It's quite a big number. It's like 10 million, right? So that allows me to format that in a table. You'll see that in a second, right? I haven't used this factor yet. I've got to define these table headers. So I've got one called VBC mean, and I'm assigning to that the viable counts mean, and I'm multiplying it by my factor. And the same for the standard deviation underneath. So I'm creating a new column called VBC_SD, and I'm just adding a column by multiplying my variable counts SD in my data frame. You can see it there. If I look at my summary table, there it is, and multiplying that by my factor. So if I run these lines, in fact, I just run the whole thing from source, and I take a look at it again, in fact, you can see its output down here in my console. It's got the extra two columns, VBC mean and VBC SD. Okay, so nearly there. You'll also notice that I've included this line 15, which is a write.csv function, and this is allowing me to save my data frame to a CSV file called compost summary, and I'm not including the row names, so it's not including the numbers at the start of the rows here, and I can actually inspect that. There you go, it's just a CSV file. So I can import that into Excel, format it, and then stick it into a template, and that's exactly what I'm going to do now. I'm going to fire up Excel. Here we go. Got a brand new workbook. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let's go to data, from text CSV. And I'm going to look for my R project folder, compost. There's my compost summary, import that. Okay, looks good. There you go. So there's my table. I can change how this looks. I can make it blue. I think the one I've used in the template is something like this, or maybe this. Yeah, that'll do. And another thing I've done is I've formatted all of this to, well, actually, let's think about this a second. If you go back and read what I'm asking you to generate a summary table of, it's the mean and standard deviations of the temperature, the moisture, and the viable bacterial count. So I don't actually want columns F and G in here, so I'm just going to delete those. And everything else, I'm going to format this to 1 decimal place. I think will be more than enough. Oh, wrong way. There we go. That would be great. And then I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to copy that. And that's going into a known template, which is also in the book. I think I've left it down here. So yeah, style it how you like, then cut and paste it into your Mega Mush report template. I just downloaded that. Let's open it up. Enable editing, and let's paste this table in here. Oops. There we go. So it's slightly different, and my table headers are slightly different. I'll change those in a second. I like to right click on this little crosshair box in the top left, go to auto fit, and then auto fit to window. Okay, that looks a bit better. I have got the same headers that I want in here as the example above, so I'm going to cheat here, and I'm just going to copy my headers and paste them in there like that. Okay, and what I'll probably do here, I'm just going to wiggle these around to fit as well. There we go, we got there eventually. Don't forget to give your table a caption. I will let you do that, but that's how we're going to get our summary caption, our summary table into our report template. Okay, that's video 1 for this week.